The game was already stacked against them before the ball even touched the hardwood. The Indiana Fever walked into Minnesota with the weight of a cursed season on their shoulders, a roster gutted by injuries, and a sense of exhaustion that could be felt through the television screen. 5 key players were already sidelined, including Caitlin Clark, the face of the franchise, and the one player capable of anchoring their fragile hopes of survival. Sophie Cunningham, out for the season with a devastating MCL tear. Sydney Colson, done with an ACL injury. Arie MacDonald, another season-ending injury. Khloe Bby, sidelined with a nagging knee problem. Each absence felt like another brick loaded onto Indiana's back. And as if that wasn't enough, Odyssey Sims, already limping from her own battle wounds, was still forced to lace up and step into the fire because there was simply no one else left. That's what desperation looks like in professional basketball. You don't just play shorthanded, you play broken. And yet Indiana still walked into Minnesota prepared to fight. They didn't expect pity. They didn't expect miracles. But what they didn't expect, and what no team deserves, was to have the referees become their biggest opponent. Because in a game where the Fever were already battered, bruised, and hanging by threads, the officiating delivered the cruelest blow of all. Midway through the game, with Indiana still clinging to life, Lexie Hull took a sharp elbow to the face from Khloe Bby. It was not a glancing bump. It was not incidental contact. It was a violent swing that dropped Hull to the floor, clutching at her face in pain. The crowd gasped. The broadcast replay left no room for doubt. This was a foul, clear, flagrant, undeniable. Yet when the whistle blew, the referees called it not on McBride but on Hull. The victim of the elbow was somehow punished for receiving it. That was the breaking point. Caitlin Clark, watching from the sidelines, could barely contain her fury. Fans erupted online. Analysts shook their heads in disbelief. For Indiana, it was the latest in a growing list of questionable calls that have fueled a narrative many can no longer ignore. Are the referees out to get the Fever? Because this wasn't just about one call. This was about a pattern. Every game, it seemed Indiana players were taking the hardest hits. Body shots, shoves, trips, elbows, and time and again the whistle didn't come. If anything, it felt reversed, with Indiana somehow absorbing the blame for plays they didn't initiate. With every no call, with every reversed whistle, the frustration boiled hotter. And when your team is already limping through one of the most brutal injury stretches in recent memory, officiating bias becomes more than an annoyance. It becomes the nail in the coffin. To understand just how fragile this team was, you have to picture the lineup Indiana was forced to roll out. Their entire guard rotation gutted. Their wings evaporated. Lexie Hull, normally a role player who contributes energy, defense, and the occasional offensive spark, was suddenly forced to shoulder star-level minutes. Against Minnesota just 2 nights before, she played a career-high 37 minutes and scored 23 points. Not because the team was riding a hot hand, but because there was literally no one else. Kelsey Mitchell, their scoring dynamo, was pushed into the kind of workload that can break even the toughest players. And still she delivered, dropping 26 points and doing everything in her power to drag Indiana into contention against a team that should have blown them out of the gym. But grit only goes so far when the rules of the game feel tilted against you. Minnesota leaned into physical play all night, muscling Indiana in the paint, testing every drive, and daring referees to call something. More often than not, nothing came. Meanwhile, when the Fever tried to return the same intensity, the whistle blew immediately. Stephanie White, Indiana's head coach, didn't need to say it outright, but her comments hinted at what everyone watching could see. The game wasn't being called evenly. Then came the elbow. Lexie Hull, already stretched thin, already playing above and beyond her normal role, takes an arm across the jaw from Khloe Bby. She goes down. The crowd sees it. The cameras replay it. Fans brace for the obvious flagrant. And then the whistle comes down on Hull herself. The pain wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. It felt like confirmation that no matter how hard Indiana played, they weren't going to get a fair fight. Social media lit up instantly. Fans replayed the clip, slowed it down, froze the frame at the exact moment McBride's elbow connected. Over and over again, the outrage grew. How could this possibly be called on Hull? How could the referees look at that play and decide the victim was the aggressor? To Fever fans, it wasn't just incompetence, it was corruption. And Caitlin Clark's reaction from the sidelines told the story better than any slow-motion replay. She was furious, her jaw clenched, Her voice carried. It wasn't just about Lexie Hull's elbow, it was about everything she had seen this team go through. Clark herself has been targeted physically all season, absorbing hard fouls and relentless defense without the same whistles her opponents get. The officiating hasn't protected her. It hasn't protected her teammates. And now, as her team tries to hang on to a playoff seed with half the roster out, it felt like the referees were piling on. The Fever, to their credit, refused to fold. Despite the chaos, despite the officiating, despite the sheer weight of exhaustion, they fought back. Shea Petty, a hardship signing who barely had time to learn the playbook, dropped 16 points off the bench as if she had been part of the system all year. Aaliyah Boston, doubled and battered in the paint, anchored the defense with relentless effort. Kelsey Mitchell played like a superstar, carving through defenders and keeping the Fever within reach until she simply ran out of gas. Aerial Powers, another emergency addition, fought tooth and nail for every shot, showing the kind of hunger you only see in players who know they're carrying more than their fair share. This wasn't a game about execution. It wasn't about strategy. It was about survival. The Fever had to claw for every inch of respect, and still the deck was stacked against them. By the time the final buzzer sounded, the score wasn't just a loss. It was a message. Indiana wasn't just fighting their opponents. They were fighting the officials, the injuries, the very system that was supposed to protect them. That's why the return of Caitlin Clark looms so large. Fans saw her back on the practice court, moving again, working with her teammates. It wasn't a full return. She wasn't cleared to play yet, but even just the sight of her in warm-ups shifted the energy. For weeks, the Fever have looked like a team stitched together with duct tape and hope. Clark is the player who can turn them back into a playoff-caliber squad. Not just because of her scoring, but because of her ability to orchestrate, to create rhythm, to make players like Boston and Mitchell shine brighter.